Rage is not a flaw in the human condition. It's proof that something inside you still cares enough to burn. It's the spark that ignites when you witness cruelty, corruption, or the slow suffocation of truth. The world wants you to believe rage is dangerous, that it should be buried beneath civility and apathy. But the magician and the punk both know better. Rage is sacred when it's awake, when it's not mindless destruction, but presence, pure and unfiltered. It's the sound of the spirit refusing to die quietly. We live in an age of numbing. Everything around us is designed to pacify. The endless scroll, the soft distractions, the illusion that it's all out of our control anyway. But rage cuts through that haze like a blade. It wakes you up. It reminds you that you're alive, that your will still matters, that your voice can still shatter the silence. That's why it's sacred, because it's honest, because it's human, because it's divine. In magic, rage is the fire beneath all transformation. Every spell, every invocation, every act of will begins with friction, the spark of want. The difference between ordinary anger and sacred rage is awareness. One consumes you, the other fuels you. When you take that wild current and channel it through purpose, it becomes forged fire, the kind that burns away illusions and opens the path to creation. The punk magician treats that fire like a rite. Rage is no longer the enemy, it's the offering. It's what lights the candle, what drives the scream that becomes prayer. It's the energy that fuels the act of becoming. In a world built on quiet compliance, to burn brightly is to rebel. And that rebellion, when it's deliberate and directed, becomes devotion, a way of saying, I will not go cold. I will not forget the pulse that makes me real. Sacred rage isn't about chaos for chaos' sake. It's about choosing to be alive in a culture that wants you sedated. It's about remembering that fire is sacred, that what burns can also illuminate. When you work with it consciously, rage becomes your ally, your altar flame, your raw creative current. Beneath the skin, that forged fire waits, not to destroy you, but to make you whole. If you're connecting with punk magic, the rebellion, the anarchy, the magic that bites back, you can join the Punk Magic Patreon for free. Be part of the movement, get updates, and let's build a community. And if you want to help keep this work alive and independent, you can throw in your support with the $5 monthly tier. Links in the description. Join the revolution. Fire has always been the most paradoxical of the elements. It destroys, but it also transforms. It devours forests and forges blades. It cooks our food, lights our homes, and burns our prayers into smoke. Rage is the same force made flesh. It is fire in emotional form, volatile, luminous, alive. When we speak of sacred rage, we are talking about reclaiming fire as our teacher and ally, about learning how to wield it without being consumed. In the old myths, fire was divine property. Prometheus stole it from the gods, not because he was defiant for its own sake, but because he believed humanity deserved illumination. That act of theft, that blasphemous generosity, is the perfect symbol of what punk magic stands for. The system says, don't touch it, don't question it, don't take what isn't yours. But the magician says, I will take what I want to light the dark. Rage is the moment you stop obeying the gods of silence and start making your own light. Rage, when treated as a sacred element, becomes a form of awareness. It's not the enemy of peace. It's the guardian of integrity. It shows you where something's wrong, where your boundaries have been crossed, where truth is being violated. It's the warning flame in the soul, signaling that something has gone out of balance. But like any element, it must be worked with carefully. Too little fire, and you become dull, obedient, passive. Too much, and you burn yourself hollow. The magician's art is to hold the balance, to stand in the heat without fear. When rage is repressed, it turns toxic. It seeps inward, hardening into bitterness or despair. The body stores it, the spirit chokes on it, but when it's expressed with awareness, when it's ritualized, it becomes medicine. It can purge stagnation, clear energetic blockages, and restore the flow of will. It's no accident that fire is central to purification rites across every culture, from the burning of incense and candles to the smouldering ashes of the phoenix. Rage performs the same function within the psyche. It burns the rot. To recognize rage as sacred is to dismantle the conditioning that says you must always be calm, polite, manageable. Calmness is a tool of control when it demands silence in the face of harm. The punk magician understands that holiness can look like shouting, that divinity can sound like feedback through an amp. Sacred rage is not a tantrum, it's a liturgy of truth. It's the roar that says, I will not participate in my own diminishment. When you light a candle for transformation, you are invoking the same energy that lives in your rage. Both flames demand respect, both require breath, both hunger for direction. The trick, the magic, lies in learning to hold that heat, to feed it with intention instead of impulse. Rage is not the opposite of love. It's love in armor. It's the force that defends what is beautiful and refuses to let it be destroyed. In punk magic, we bow to no altar, but the one we build ourselves. And the first offering on that altar is always fire. To live punk is to pray through rebellion. It's devotion without submission. Where traditional religions demand obedience, punk demands honesty. It's not about worshipping an external god, but about refusing every god that demands your silence. Punk is devotion to truth, even when that truth burns. At its core, punk is a spiritual act. It's the declaration that life, even stripped of polish and order, is still sacred in its rawest, loudest form. To rip your jeans, to scream into a mic, to say words they told you never to say, those are all forms of ritual. They're acts of power, they're spells of refusal. Every no shouted from the gut is an invocation of sovereignty. The punk magician sees divinity not in perfection, but in the real. The blood on the stage, the ink on the fingers, the cigarette burns on a jacket, all of it is testimony that says, I'm here, I'm flawed, and I'm holy anyway. In a world obsessed with image and compliance, this becomes a radical act of devotion. It's worship through authenticity. To live punk is to make your life an altar to the unfiltered self, the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't apologize, and doesn't conform. Magic thrives in the same soil. Both punk and magic are born from the refusal to accept imposed reality. Where punk tears down the systems of cultural control, magic tears down the illusions of metaphysical control. Both are anarchic in nature, not because they seek chaos, but because they believe that order should arise from will, not obedience. The creed of refusal says, I will not kneel to a system that feeds on submission. It is the refusal to hand over your agency, whether to a church, a corporation, or a tyrant, but it's not nihilism. It's devotion turned inside out, a recognition that destruction is sometimes the only path to creation. You destroy the false so that the true can emerge. The punk magician's refusal is an act of love for what's real. Every act of rebellion can be ritual when it's done with awareness. Lighting a cigarette can be an offering to the spirits of resistance. Writing protest lyrics can be spellcraft. Marching, screaming, painting, breaking, all of it can be magic if it's infused with intent. Punk devotion is not about rejection for rejection's sake. It's about aligning yourself with what's alive and burning away everything that smothers it. In a way, punk is the devotional path of the heretic, the one who loves truth more than approval. It's a religion of self made saints and desecrated temples. It's not about purity, but presence. You don't need incense or sacred robes. You need honesty, noise, and the courage to exist on your own terms. The punk magician doesn't seek transcendence. They drag the divine down into the dirt, into the clubs, into the streets where real life happens. Devotion in this context is not gentle, it's fierce. It's the kind that bleeds and still keeps singing. It's the moment you realize that every scar, every scream, every song of refusal was prayer all along. Punk devotion is the code of those who have seen through the illusion and decided to live anyway, loud, defiant, and free. All magic begins with energy. Before the words, the sigils, the candles, there's the pulse beneath the ribs, the current in the blood. That's the real source of power. Most people let their emotions rule them or repress them, but the magician learns to work with them. Rage, grief, desire, love, these are the elements of human alchemy, and among them, rage is the most explosive. It's the forge fire of transformation. To understand rage as energy, you have to see it not as a moral failing, but as raw potential. It's heat, it's movement, it's voltage. It floods the nervous system with charge, ignites the body, sharpens the mind, but left untended, that current lashes out, it consumes. It burns bridges, it turns inward as self hate or despair. The trick is to catch it before it spills. The magician steps into that moment when the body is shaking, when the heart is pounding, and says, I own it. That is the moment of alchemy, when awareness enters the storm. The punk magician doesn't try to suppress the rage or justify it. They ride it. They let it surge through the body, feeling every pulse, every tremor, until the emotion begins to separate from its story. You stop thinking about why you're angry and start feeling what the anger is: pure kinetic energy. Once it's free of the narrative, it becomes power. In alchemy, the base metal must be melted before it can be turned to gold. Rage is that melting point. It dissolves rigidity, the habits, the fears, the conditioning. When you channel it consciously, you can shape it into anything. The key is transmutation, not release. Most of society tells you to let it go. Magic says transform it. Because once rage is transmuted, it becomes a universal fuel. It's not just anger anymore, it's motion, focus, drive. You can imbue it with any intent you choose: protection, healing, creativity, vengeance, justice, freedom, whatever it may be. This is where discipline enters the picture. Punk magic isn't about recklessness, it's about freedom through control. You don't cast from rage, that's disorder. You cast through it. You use it as the generator, but your will is the conductor. Think of it like electricity. Rage is the current. Your intent is the circuit. Without the circuit, the energy just explodes. With it, the power flows clean, directed, unstoppable. The process of transmutation often begins in the body. Breath becomes your alchemical bellows, in through the nose, out through the mouth, deep and deliberate. You feel the rage like fire in your chest. Instead of fighting it, you breathe into it. You expand it until it fills you entirely, until it stops feeling like rage and starts feeling like light. That's when you know it's shifted. You've taken the energy that would have burned you and turned it into radiance. Some magicians visualize it as color: red or orange flame cooling into gold, or black smoke condensing into silver light. Others feel it as texture: heavy heat that becomes weightless. Whatever form it takes, the essence is the same. You've changed its nature without extinguishing its force. That's real alchemy, not turning lead into gold, but turning pain into power. Rage transmutation is not escapism, it's engagement. It sees the rot of the world, but it won't let itself be owned by it. You stand in the blaze, hands open, eyes wide, until what once felt unbearable becomes luminous. That light is your spell fuel, the charged current that can now be shaped into words, symbols, acts. From that moment on, every emotion you experience becomes potential magic. Magician's art is not peace without passion, but peace within fire. That's the secret of punk devotion. You don't transcend your emotions, you weaponize them for beauty, justice, and creation. You don't suppress the storm, you become the storm. And in doing so, you learn to steer the lightning. Theory means nothing until it's embodied. Rage, no matter how sacred, must move through the body and will to become magic. The punk magician doesn't seek to escape their fury, they ritualize it, shaping it into art, spell, or act. It's the difference between smashing a wall and breaking open a gate. The intention defines the outcome. When the fire builds, don't run from it. Set the stage, dim the lights, light a single candle, red for raw power, black for the death of what no longer serves, or white for purification if you're turning pain into clarity. You are not calming yourself down, you're preparing to meet yourself. Breathe into the heat in your chest. Feel your pulse as the drumbeat of the rite. This is the temple of adrenaline, and you are both priest and offering. Let the rage speak first. You can scream, whisper, write, or move. Whatever lets it break its silence. Punks have always known this. Sometimes the scream is the spell. You might shout until your throat burns, scrawl sigils in ink or blood, smash a symbol of what binds you, not for violence's sake, but to make space. The act becomes a vessel, a channel, a point of transformation. When the energy peaks, when your body shakes and your mind is sharp, stop. That stillness right after the explosion is pure magic. That's the crucible. Now, give it purpose. See the energy you've raised and a swirling current of heat, color, or light. Shape it, focus it. You can push it outward, aim it at a target, infuse it into a candle, a charm, a sigil, or send it spiraling into the ether with your intent. State it clearly from the gut. This is my power, this is my will, this is the fire we made. Speak what you want it to become. Justice, protection, strength, healing, courage, and release it. If you prefer quieter rites, channel the fire into creation instead of destruction. Paint, write, drum, dance. Each act becomes the crucible where emotion turns to manifestation. The goal is containment with freedom, a paradox that punk understands well. You are free to feel everything, but you refuse to be ruled by it. The art becomes the vessel that holds the blaze. After the rite, ground yourself. Wash your hands in cold water, step outside, breathe night air. Grounding isn't a return to normal, it's a seal on the working, the way a blacksmith quenches the blade. You've taken the fire and turned it into form. Honor that. Over time, you'll learn to summon rage intentionally, not by seeking pain, but by invoking passion. Rage doesn't have to come from harm, it can come from care. It's the fire that says, I love this world too much to let it rot unchallenged. When channeled regularly, sacred rage becomes a renewable resource, a magical current that keeps your will alive. These rituals are not about control, they're about communion. You and your rage, you and your magic are partners in creation. The energy you once feared becomes your familiar, your fire spirit. It teaches resilience, clarity, and will. The more you work with it, the cleaner the flame burns. Punk ritual isn't pretty. It's raw, messy, alive. It doesn't need robes or Latin incantations. It needs honesty, intensity, and a willingness to face what's inside you without flinching. Sacred rage becomes sacred precisely because you dare to meet it. Every time you turn that meeting into magic, you reclaim another piece of your own power and another piece of the world that told you to keep it quiet. Strip back the layers of fire and fury, and you'll always find something tender beneath, the trembling pulse of care. Sacred rage is never born from emptiness, it's born from heartbreak. It's the raw sound of a soul that still gives a damn. Beneath every clenched fist and every scream for justice lies love, fierce, bruised, desperate love for what could be, for what should be, for what the world has forgotten. That's the hidden paradox of rage. The more you love, the angrier you can become when that love is betrayed. Punk devotion starts there, in the heartbreak of seeing beauty crushed under the weight of apathy and greed. It's the cry of someone who refuses to stop caring, even when caring hurts. That's why punk and magic meet so naturally. Both are acts of love disguised as rebellion. The spell and the scream are twin prayers to the same God, the God of persistence, of defiance, of hope that refuses to die. When the punk magician raises their voice or strikes their drum, they're not calling for destruction for its own sake. They're calling for life to return to balance. They're summoning the spirit of restoration, a world where truth, freedom, and dignity still mean something. Rage is simply love defending itself. It's love putting on armor. It's compassion with its teeth showing. Compassion and rage are mirrors of the same emotion. Compassion sees the wound. Rage refuses to let it fester. Compassion reaches out a hand. Rage slams a fist on the table and demands healing. Both are sacred. Both come from the same pulse, that deep, ancient knowing that all things are connected and that harm to one is harm to all. The punk magician honors both faces, the soft and the sharp, the mercy and the fire. Without compassion, rage becomes cruelty. Without rage, compassion becomes impotence. Together, they create balance, the heart and the flame. True magic has never been about vengeance or ego. It's about equilibrium. It's about restoring the sacred pattern when it's been warped by greed, injustice, or decay. When you work through sacred rage, your goal isn't to punish, it's to awaken. You're not feeding the fire to destroy the world, you're using it to burn away what's false so something honest can grow. That's the essence of punk devotion, devotion to what is real. Punk devotion builds altars to the fragile, stubborn beauty of existence. An altar can be a cracked photograph, a wilted flower, a protest sign, or a blood-stained lyric sheet, anything that honors what still matters. These small shrines are acts of love in a world that keeps trying to convince you not to care. Sacred rage guards those altars like a sentinel, keeping the sacred flame alive in a culture of numbness. To live this way is to love recklessly, not with sentimentality, but with grit. It's to keep your heart open even while the world burns. It's to see your anger as proof that your love has not died. Punk magic teaches that every shout, every spell, every act of refusal is an offering, a declaration that life is still worth fighting for. Rage is not the opposite of peace, it's the sound peace makes when it's defending itself. When you stand before your candle, your sigil, your mirror, remember this. Beneath the noise, there is a heartbeat. Beneath the flame, there is tenderness. Your rage does not make you unworthy. It makes you human, alive, and fiercely devoted to the possibility that things can still be better. That's the truth at the heart of sacred rage. To burn is to care. To care is to create. And to create in this broken world is the most sacred act of all. At some point, ritual stops being something you do and becomes something you are. That's where punk devotion lives, not on an altar, not in a circle drawn with chalk or flour, but in the everyday rhythm of existence. Living itself becomes a spell. Every breath, every word, every act that refuses the dull machinery of conformity becomes a small invocation. This is the devotional current, the continuous pulse of sacred intent running through life, sustained by the choice to remain awake. Punk devotion doesn't need perfection. It strives in rawness, in the mess of being human. It's expressed in the music you make, the words you speak, the way you treat others when no one's watching. It's a quiet kind of priesthood that doesn't kneel before any god, but the truth of your own soul. Every moment becomes ritual when lived with awareness, when you refuse to be numbed, when you let your fire illuminate even the mundane. The morning coffee, the graffiti on the wall, the protest chant, the simple act of telling the truth. These are offerings in the temple of the real. Sacred rage finds its rightful home here, woven into the texture of daily life. Instead of erupting uncontrollably, it flows like electricity through your art, your work, your interactions. You transmute it not by suppressing it, but by shaping it, turning anger into art, grief into compassion, frustration into fuel. This is alchemy in motion. Every small act becomes part of a greater rite, a declaration that you are here, that you see, that you will not go quiet. In this way, punk devotion is a refusal to fall asleep in a world built on anesthesia. It's choosing to feel deeply even when it hurts, to care even when it costs. It's an act of rebellion against the deadening pulse of indifference. To live with devotion is to turn your entire life into a living spell, not for wealth or power, but for authenticity, integrity, and awakening. To live this way is to become a walking shrine, a moving, breathing embodiment of everything you believe in. Each act of kindness, each truth spoken, each refusal to bow becomes a sigil carved into reality. You are both the altar and the offering, and through that living devotion, your magic ceases to be something separate from life. It is life, burning brightly through every heartbeat, every breath, every act of will. Stand at the edge of the world and light your flame. The punk magician is a priest of fire, not bowing to any throne, no matter how gilded, no matter how ancient. Sacred rage is not chaos dressed in leather. It is the hammer striking the anvil of reality, the fire that burns away decay and forges what can endure. It is purification, not wanton destruction. It is reclamation, not surrender. It is rebirth, blazing with the fury of those who refuse to accept a world dulled by fear and conformity. To practice punk devotion is to feed that fire relentlessly. Every act of courage, every refusal to lie or comply, every song screamed into the void becomes a log added to the blaze. Love is the fuel. Will is the oxygen. Your rage is the spark that leaps from the tinder of your chest. Feed it consciously. Let it illuminate. Let it warm. Let it sharpen. It is not an end in itself. It is the energy that powers creation, the heartbeat of transformation. This is the forge of the burn, a collective with no walls, no hierarchy, no dogma. Each heretic stands alone, yet together in spirit, bound by the conviction that life must be lived with intensity, honesty, and devotion. There is no forgiveness demanded, no absolution sought, only the fire of self-recognition, the acceptance that power lies in embracing the full spectrum of your humanity. Sacred rage and punk devotion are the sacraments, living fiercely in the liturgy. Picture it. The world as a vast forge, molten and unshaped. You, the punk magician, are the iron at its center. Your rage is the fire, your intent the hammer, your devotion the anvil. Each thought, each act, each spell is a strike, shaping the raw metal of existence. Sparks fly, heat roars, and in that chaos, creation takes form. The world bends, reshapes, renews, not because it must, but because you dared to bring the flame. This is your manifesto, your ritual, your declaration. To be alive is to burn. To care is to ignite. To live, to fight, to create. These are the acts that make you sacred. Sacred rage is your hymn. Punk devotion is your altar. And every day you live with fire is another verse in the liturgy of the heretic, the devoted, the unrepentant. Stand in the blaze, be the spark, shape the world.